Welcome into the Skol Purple Podcast, everyone. It is that time. The NFL is officially done with the preseason. The regular season is just around the corner, and we are pumped and ready to rock and roll. Should be a lot of fun to talk briefly. It should be a short episode today with Tony, with the roster cuts. There are a few surprises, but for the most part, a pretty straightforward cut for the Vikings today. So looking forward to talking about that. But first of all, Tony, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, we're just inching our way closer to the regular season. So I am very patiently waiting, but boy oh boy, you know, every day that we have these, you know, roster cut downs, and certainly I think there might be some moves that come down the pipeline before the Bucks game. But I'm just getting excited. I have to keep reminding myself we have this in between week where there is no NFL football, because boy, oh boy, I sure wish week 1 was next week. I don't know about you.
I am 100% with you right there. And I think I maybe even talked about that on our last episode of just how frustrating this extra week in between is. But in the same aspect, it probably helps the Vikings and other teams around the league prepare more for their week 1 game, get all freshened up, ready to go. And also, it helps the NFL to avoid the last big hurrah before the end of summer, if you will, Labor Day weekend.
Oh, sure. I suppose. Minnesota State Fair is going on. So any of my fellow Minnesotans out there, if you haven't been out, I have been. It was plenty hot, but always some good eats, some good drinks. I had a blueberry slushy alcoholic beverage, and that was mighty tasty.
And Tony is now no longer able to do the show. He is too inebriated.
It wasn't today. It wasn't today.
Oh, okay. Well, good. But yeah, you never know what they're gonna have at those state fairs. Like, there's always a new something or other. Like, hey, try this. This sounds absolutely terrible, but actually, it's very, very good.
Yeah, right. I didn't get to try it, but I had a few. The people that I was there with tried. They have a deep fried chocolate chip cookie bowl. Okay, so follow me.
Ooh,
deep fried
there
chocolate
are some
chip
things
cookie
that
bowl.
just sound really good too, by the way.
And then in the bowl was mini donut cinnamon ice cream. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So
well, that just sounds great. So there
exactly.
You go. They're proving my theory wrong.
If anybody's looking for diabetes, you're going to be able to find it at the state fair.
That's right. Or yeah, pretty much any like fair food, like you're gonna find it.
Oh,
you're definitely gonna find it.
It's all tasty, but yeah, no, I'm good. I only need to go once a year, and I've had my fill.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey, the Vikings did some things today. Not sure if anybody is aware of that, but the Vikings, just like every other NFL team for that matter, got down to the amount of players they needed to get down to, which is 53. But that does not mean, Tony, as we'll talk about here, that this is the final 53-man roster. This is just, quote unquote, the initial 53-man roster, because there is a possibility that the Vikings could make at least one, if not multiple, waiver claims, or potentially even sign somebody from free agency, or even make a trade or two. So there are possibilities. We saw the Vikings pick up Jalen Reagor, who, by the way, made the 53-man roster today, and Ross Blacklock, who didn't make it today. But we saw them pick those guys up last year after those initial 53-man rosters were announced. So there is an opportunity that or a possibility, I should say, that the Vikings do that again this year. Maybe not with, maybe not with such high caliber of guys in terms of how they came out of the draft. Like Jalen Reagor was a first overall pick or a first round pick. And I think Blacklock was a former second round pick. So both of those guys pretty high former draft picks. But yeah, so what we're going to do is talk a little bit about this. Before we actually get to the actual cuts here, what are your initial thoughts, Tony, on the roster? And was there any big surprises for you?
No major surprises for me, to be quite honest with you. I think I was a little surprised that that we kept as many wide receivers. I mean, I guess it's a crowded room. I mean, you got a lot of talent in there. I never really know what to believe when it comes to some of the speculation. Like, for instance, with the Jalen Reagor stuff, I'm not saying it's not true that there was interest in trading him. There absolutely may have been, whatever. But it just, again, I'm always like a little grain of salty with these things, kind of like when there was a quote unquote bidding war for Dalvin Cook. When we were going to basically end up releasing him, which is what happened. So I don't know. I feel like maybe there was a bubble receiver. There's some kind of chatter that maybe Blake Proehl was kind of on the bubble there. And maybe if we would have been able to generate some trade interest for Reagor, then Proehl makes the 53. Reagor gets traded for either draft capital or who knows, maybe another player. So again, I don't really know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like you said, I think the roster is definitely not finished. I would be insanely surprised if this is it. I think that we're going to see some moves within the next couple days, maybe over the next week. Was a little surprised. I guess if there was one surprise for me, I was a little surprised that we did not keep. You might need to help me out on this one though, Carson. Corner that we picked up in the offseason. Was it Joe Jawan or
Jawan Williams? Yeah.
Yeah. So because I had heard that he had a pretty good camp, and it just seems like we may be a little thin at corner, especially with all the young guys. So and I felt like, Booth kind of looked a little suspect. I don't think that's a controversial take. But Booth made the 53. So I kind of feel like when and if we see some moves, and I think it's more of a when than an if, we might see some shuffling with those corners. But that's, that's my speculation, but I'm sticking to it.
All right. Yeah, I don't think that's totally out of the realm of possibilities that the Vikings maybe try and trade for a corner. Our friend and former contributor of the show, David, the other night on his show made mention of trading for Xavier Howard. And I think Xavier is a little too old, and for my money, especially I can't remember who he said we would trade. I can't remember the name that he said we would trade, but I just don't know. I looked at Xavier Howard's PFF numbers, and I know some people hate PFF, whatever, but I did not think his PFF numbers were very good, and PFF gave him like a grade in the mid 50s last year overall. So it just kind of tells me that he's on his way out.
Sure.
And I think it was Hawkinson. I think he mentioned Hawkinson, and I think Hawkinson's way more valuable than Xavier Howard at this point. I don't think Xavier Howard's a top 15, maybe even top 20 corner in the league anymore.
Yeah.
So that's just my thought.
Yeah, as far as value is concerned, you're absolutely right. I think the context in which we were kind of talking on that subject was that with some of the, shall we say again, kind of grumblings around the team and some of the reports that have come out, it sounds like Hawk is trying to get paid like a, top tight end in the league. And I can't necessarily blame him for that because I think he's up there. I think he's definitely top 2, maybe top 3 tight end in the league. And
at bare minimum top 5, right?
For sure. And I think a good case could be made that again, he's right there in the mix. I mean, Kelsey obviously is kind of undisputed number 1. But where he slots in behind Kelsey, I think you could make a good case for 2 or 3. And anyway, the reason why I say that is because if he's looking for this big time contract, we also have another guy by the name of Justin Jefferson, who I think is also looking for a pretty big contract. And it just would be really tough to keep a roster that's competitive when you've got guys that, again, deservedly so, are at the top of their craft and they want to be paid like the top of their craft. It's very difficult. And so while I would be very disappointed to see Hawkinson leave, I think if that's what he's looking for, I don't think that there's a spot for him here because I don't know if we can afford that kind of capital at that position when we have some other pretty glaring holes, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think if the context was Xavier Howard could be there and then he's affordable and, we could keep him around for a while, I can see an argument there. Because I do think at this point, Hawkinson is willing to play on this year's contract. We haven't heard any different. Let's hope that's definitely not the case. I don't think he's going to hold out on us. Let's fingers crossed, knock on wood that doesn't come to pass. But that's the worst case scenario. I think
never
that
know.
Scenario is that it's another 1 year rental basically with him, and then he's out.
And they could just tag him because the tight end tag is not astronomical like it would be for like a quarterback.
That's true. That's very true.
So they could probably tag him for between $10 to $15 million a year, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So that's not bad. I mean, you would definitely do that for just a year, but
he wouldn't be happy about it, but
right. All right. Well, here we go. We've got the stuff right here. I went through the trouble in creating some graphics for everyone. So here's the Vikings 53-man roster moves on offense. We already knew about Jordan Tiamu. I believe that's how you say that. I apologize if that's not correct. Dwayne McBride, maybe one of the more questionable cuts. Tony, I think everybody was pretty excited about that kid coming out. And obviously, I think the biggest problems with him, so to speak, or at least on the football field, is his inability to do much more than just run. He's not great in the pass catching side of things, and he's not great. I've heard not great at like blitz pickups on like third down and stuff. So it kind of becomes an Adrian Peterson type of situation. I'm not saying he's Adrian Peterson. Let me just make that very clear. But he becomes that kind of guy that can only do one thing. He does it pretty well. He doesn't maybe do it like Adrian Peterson did, but he does it pretty well, or did in college. But it's not warranted enough, according to the Vikings, to keep him on the 53-man roster. And I think that shows in where he was drafted, the 7th round, Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a surprise to me. I know this is the one that seems to be getting the most amount of attention. Not a surprise to me. As somebody who watched all of the preseason games, attended one of them, I thought that McBride looked... I mean, and again, I know this is hypercritical because I'm fat and slow and, but we're not talking about me. I'm not trying to make an NFL roster, but he looked slow. He didn't look like he had any sort of burst at all. I mean, I know a lot of people talked about like vision. To me, he looked like a worse version of a guy who actually had a free agent visit here just a little while ago. He, to me, looked like a worse version of Kareem Hunt. And that was, Kareem Hunt coming out of college, that was also a thing. It was like, yeah, this guy's got really good vision, but, breakaway speed, kind of not there. Isn't really a guy that's super shifty. This isn't a Jahmyr Gibbs or Alvin Kamara. It's like kind of what are they bringing to the table? Because you got to imagine you get to the NFL level, everybody's fast.
Right.
And everything moves faster, quicker, they're stronger. So a guy that just doesn't have that explosiveness to him, it's like Treadwell in a running back body. That to me. So I wasn't I was kind of like, like this guy could maybe be again, ceiling from me was maybe Kareem Hunt. And I said Kareem Hunt's done well, but if you can't put it together and have like elite vision and things like that, you're going to struggle. So he struggled, and so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, so I suppose I should read these for the audio audience. Everybody's going to love this. So Jordan Tiamu, the quarterback that they got, he was an XFL product. Dwayne McBride, Abram Smith, Aaron Dykes, the running backs that were cut. Blake Prohl, Lucky Jackson, Jacob Copeland, Tristan Jackson, Thayer Thomas, and Garrett Magg, the wide receivers that were waived. Tight ends, Ben Sims, Colin Thompson. Offensive lineman, Josh Sokol. And I thought there was maybe an outside shot for Sokol to make it. He was talked about a lot last year as maybe a future number 2 center behind Garrett Bradbury. Jack Snyder, Alan Ali, Jared Williams, and Christian Delario. And then placed on reserve non-football injury was Chris Reed, who will more than likely take that what would be the 9th offensive line spot for the Vikings when he comes back, because the Vikings only kept 8 offensive linemen, which I found very interesting, Tony. I think last year they kept 10. So that's 2 less offensive linemen. Like I said, I think they'll get Chris Reed back at some point, and he'll probably force one of these guys to get cut. But there's the offensive cuts. Any other further thoughts? I'm a little bit surprised they didn't keep Josh Sokol, but especially with Chris Reed going on the list. But
not super surprised. I think that potential again moves where we see waiver wire stuff, guys getting picked up. I wouldn't be surprised to see again some shuffling with that offensive line depth, as you kind of already mentioned. So,
yeah. All right, let's see before we continue. Oh, we got a comment here. Should have kept Sokol because his name is so close to Skol? Yes, absolutely.
Skol.
You can't. Yeah, that's right. You can't cut Skol.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. But let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. So the defensive side of the ball, they waived defensive lineman Ross Blacklock, Asezi Atumwo from Minnesota, TJ Smith. I'm sure that hurts Tony's heart, by the way, since he's such a big Gophers fan.
Yeah.
Calvin Avery, and then the edge rushers, Luigi Villain. A little bit of a surprise there. There had been talks of DJ Wanham potentially getting cut, but he actually survived. And then Benton Whitley, another edge, and then linebacker Wilson Huber. Corners, Jalen Williams, Jamison Houston, CJ Calden Jr., and Kalen Barnes. And then the contract was terminated of Sheldon Day. Troy Reeder, that one came to a tiny bit of a surprise to me. I thought maybe he had a chance over Troy Dye, but the Vikings seem to love Troy Dye. And I thought maybe they'd try and keep a little bit more veteran leadership, but I think Jordan Hicks probably gives them that. Tanner Vallejo, Joanne Williams, that one was probably a pretty big surprise for most people. Jake Gervais, who was basically a body they needed to come in and play this past preseason game. And he played every down, Kevin O'Connell said. So pretty impressive for a guy that came in the week of the game. And also like Aaron Dykes did too. So I think that was a couple weeks ago, but he came in the week of a game that he played. And then Abraham Beauplan, and then Tay Gowan All of them, or both of them, waived injured designation. So, any thoughts on those guys?
Besides the Joe Juan Williams, no. I mean, no major surprises for me. I think the one thing that I've realized about Kevin O'Connell and the way that he treats preseason is I think it's really about preservation of starters and health. Obviously, we didn't see any starters basically outside of potentially Ivan Pace play really much, if at all, in the preseason. And it also tells me, based on some of these waiver or players that are waived, like for instance, you mentioned Luigi Villain.
Mm-hmm.
He was a guy that showed up for me too, throughout the preseason, that I thought, oh, this is a guy who could, potentially make the 53. But I think they put a lot of weight on practice and the joint practices that they have. And so even though we saw him a lot because he played a lot, I think that really the way KOC and this staff operates is these are the audition games for these guys. And the guys that get maybe limited reps, maybe in the first game, and then basically all the first team reps in practice, if they see enough there, like they're kind of locked in. And that's where they make those evaluations versus in those preseason games. So even though a guy like Wanham, for instance, you mentioned, who knows, maybe he's been showing out and showing great things in practices, the joint practices. I think he did play a little bit, if I remember right, in that first game. So I think I figured that out, where other teams, it's different. They kind of have a healthy mix of getting guys in and out in the preseason. I just think they like to do most of their evaluating of starters is going to be more practice than it is going to be in these preseason games, which is probably what's leading this team to not ever win preseason games. But, like we care, they don't count. So whatever.
My Padre is chiming in once again and wants to know, why do starters even suit up in the preseason? I don't know. They just do it in case break glass in case of an emergency situation, I guess. Or maybe they just want to be in their game clothes. I don't know. Maybe they're comfortable. I don't know.
I mean, Kirk Cousins was wearing his helmet for the first two.
Yeah. Which he commented on that in the post-game press conference, or one of the press conferences in the last week or two, or in the last few days, that he's doing it to get the calls. And we kind of knew that already, but just kind of confirming. But why not wear a headset, man? You're in the NFL. You've been in the NFL for how long? Why do you need to be comfortable getting the play calls in through your headset at this point? I don't know. Just another pet peeve of mine, I guess. But
well, if you've watched Quarterback,
it's Kirk Cousins, so
if you've watched the
mold for most quarterbacks.
If you've watched the show Quarterback, it should come as no surprise. Him and all of his mental reps that he does. So I would imagine for him, he would say, well, I could put on a headset, but that doesn't simulate the game because it's not going to sound the same as if I was wearing my helmet. And he has a point. So I guess I'll stop there.
All right. All right. We're going to stop bashing Cousins. Moving on.
That's right.
So before we end, like I said, this is a pretty short show. We're just going to quickly go through the initial 53-man roster, offense and defense. So Kirk Cousins, quarterback, Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall, running backs or just backs, Alexander Madison, Kene Nwangwu, Ty Chandler, CJ Ham, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt, and Nick Muse. All the tight ends made the cut except for the ones that I mentioned earlier. And then receivers, I know you're going to die of shock here, Tony, but Justin Jefferson made the cut.
I mean, he was on the bubble.
KJ Osborne listed with Justin Jefferson, so it appears as if those two are considered the starters, the top two wide receivers. So it was listed on the Vikings website like this: Justin Jefferson and KJ Osborne, and then Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, Brandon Powell. Jalen Reagor is looking like he's the odd man out if the Vikings, were to pick up another wide receiver. Not saying that it couldn't change or whatever, but anyways. And then offensive linemen, only 8: Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, Brian O'Neill, Austin Schlottman, Blake Brandel, and then Oli Udo. Those are the 2023 offensive initial 53 players. Again, Tony, I think the only thing that really is interesting is the Vikings keeping only 3 running backs, keeping 4 tight ends, and keeping only 8 offensive linemen. I guess I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Are you kind of a little taken back by it, or you're kind of like, eh?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, again, we can see so much shuffling that could potentially happen. I'm a little surprised with the running backs, just because, again, the depth is not super great, especially, I mean, because we don't know what we have in Kene, right? Like, we don't really know where he's at health-wise. Granted, they haven't had to necessarily disclose that. It's not a requirement yet for them to disclose kind of exactly where he's at with his injury status. But that's a surprise to me. Again, could we find another back out there? Certainly there are some. I saw a lot hitting the waivers today, I can tell you that. And then 4 tight ends. And it's hard to necessarily dispute the cause for Nick Muse making the team. I thought that he had about as good of a preseason as you could possibly ask for. I kind of thought maybe he could have pushed potentially Munt out. And that could have been a surprise.
The best tight end of the league, though. Come on.
Especially with the addition of Oliver, but I don't know. I mean, there's this crazy conspiracy theory with me with Hawkinson. I think, Kwesi is a smart dude, and because he is I'm not trying to speak this into existence, so I just want you to know I don't feel good about saying what I'm about to say here, Carson. It would kind of make sense for this team, depending on where they're at with Hawkinson's contract situation, to explore what we could get for Hawkinson. Because I think if we do wait till the end of the season, and the thought is maybe internally they've kind of already talked about the tag, and that maybe no dice, we don't really want to go down that road. Maybe they feel like Hawk might try to hold out if we tried to tag him, or he doesn't sign. Like, a lot of weird things can happen. So you don't want to lose an asset without getting something out of it, especially if it's a valuable asset. So I don't know. There's a part of me that kind of feels like they might be exploring some options there. I really want him on this team, but I mean, I don't know. You could probably get a lot for him, and especially if we're talking about a player, or even a player in draft capital, especially if it's a decent player on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know. I mean, you could talk me into it. I hate to say it. What do you think?
I thought you were going to say something else. Sorry.
No. I was just leaving it on that cliffhanger there,
Yeah. No, I don't necessarily disagree. I was just looking through the Twitters, so that's why I was distracted. But
the X-verse.
I was the X-verse, yeah. So JT O'Sullivan, former quarterback in the NFL, he has what's called the QB School. I think I've talked about it before on this show, but he has the QB School on social media, and then he's also got it like on YouTube. He's got a bunch of videos, and he just about 2 hours ago, from the time this is recorded, that he posted a Jaren Hall preseason week 3 film review. So if you're looking for something to watch this week, that might be something to watch, just to hear what old JT O'Sullivan says. about Jaron Hall and his future with the Vikings. Just something to keep in mind.
Something to chew on.
Something to chew on. I'm definitely going to try and make time to watch that because even though JT O'Sullivan was not a good quarterback in the NFL, I still respect his opinion on players for sure. So
yeah.
So the last slide we've got, or the last graphic we've got here, is the defensive side of the 53. So we'll go through that real quickly. Defensive linemen: Dean Lowry, Harrison Phillips, Kairos Tonga. Those are the starters. Behind them, Jonathan Bullard and Jaquelin Roy, the rookie from LSU. Outside linebackers: Marcus Davenport and Daniil Hunter. Those are your starters. DJ Wanham, Patrick Jones II, and Andre Carter II. He made the team, one of the 3 UDFAs to make it. Inside linebackers: Jordan Hicks, boo, Brian Asamoah II, Troy Dye, and Ivan Pace Jr. And cornerbacks: Byron Murphy Jr. There's only 5 this year on the initial. Caleb Evans, Andrew Booth Jr., Mekhi Blackman, Najee Thompson, and 6 safeties. This might be the most shocking of all the position groupings, Tony, in terms of you never see this, but I think based on the talent the Vikings had, they did this the right way. Harrison Smith, Cam Bynum, Josh Metellus, Lewis Seen, Jay Ward, and Theo Jackson, the safeties. I was a little surprised by Theo Jackson. Not that he hasn't been good, but I was just, sometimes you take stock into those things, sometimes you don't, but apparently the Vikings did. He could very well be one of the first guys out, though, if a move is made. And then specialists: Andrew DiPaola, the long snapper, best in the league. Greg Joseph, not the best in the league, but still on the team. And Ryan Wright, speaking of one of the best in the league, punter Ryan Wright made the roster. He had a 60-plus yard punt on the 3rd preseason game when Tony was in attendance, by the way. We never talked about that. Tony in attendance at the old bank on Saturday.
Yeah, it was fun. It was, obviously we lost. But when I left, admittedly, I did not stay until the very bitter end because it is preseason. and
I might have had to have a word with you if you did.
Yeah, we took the train.
I watched it, but...
Yeah, if I would have been at home, I would have watched the entire thing. And actually, to really tell you how sick in the head I am, I actually recorded the game at home because I knew I probably wasn't going to watch everything live. So then I had a backup to come home and then watch whatever I missed live. So no, I did not get to witness us losing. And we took the train in, so we wanted to beat the crowds leaving. But boy, oh boy, that stadium is, if you haven't been, it is an absolute gorgeous arena. It is about $50, by the way, for one brat, a burger, and 2 sodas. But outside of the what you would assume, again, is expensive stadium fare, it is just a beautiful place to watch a ball game, and they had the doors open. It was a beautiful day in Minneapolis. Yeah. The high was 70 degrees, so it was like the air was moving in. It was perfect. So it was
sounds beautiful.
It was super cool. I got to see all the cool stuff in the first half, so that was cool.
Got to see the horn, or got to hear the horn, be a part of the Skol chant, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, lots of Skol chants. Yeah.
And not in the second half, though, I'm assuming. So
no, less in the second half. Yeah, but yeah, got to see the touchdowns early. Obviously, the big sack fumble, that was super fun. Surprisingly, for again a meaningless preseason game, good turnout from Vikings fans. I'd be lying if I told you the stadium was full, but it was still very busy. And it was loud. Fans were there. They were showing up. They were loud. They were, supporting the team. So kudos to all the Vikes fans out there. It was a good showing.
Absolutely. Tony, real quick, is there anybody that's on the waiver or maybe potentially available that you think the Vikings could or maybe should go after? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I without going back and looking through everything that I saw come across my feed today, while I was also working my regular 9 to 5 job, I don't have
You work
anybody
for a
to
living, huh?
really. Well, every once in a while, it's loosely work. No, but there's nobody that really comes to mind like, oh man, I can't, like, we can't miss this opportunity. Didn't necessarily see anything like that, but I would say one that kind of perked my ears up. It doesn't make sense for the Vikings, but it also maybe makes sense for my opinion. So uh I was a little surprised, as most of the league, today when Bailey Zapp from New England got cut today.
Yeah,
Um,
Bailey Zappi. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought it is Zappy, isn't it?
Yep.
Because of my view on where I believe Hall's trajectory is, and me pretty much obviously knowing that Mullins is a backup, he's not a starter caliber player. I'm not saying Zappy would have been like, oh, maybe this guy could be like the next starter, but would I take him over Hall right now? Probably. Would I take him over Mullins? Maybe. So that one to me is a little intriguing. Do I think the Vikings do it? No. Like, no. I just think there's other areas, and I think they feel pretty good about their quarterback room. Kirk rarely ever gets hurt. Knock on wood again. So I don't know. I don't think that's one they're going to flirt with, but that was the only one that kind of perked my ears up, and I kind of went, how would he fit? Maybe, but I'd be interested to hear if you have any. I know there were some running backs that made me kind of go, but I'd have to go back through the list.
Yeah, so one guy that comes to mind, I mean, there are quite a few on this running backs list. Trey Sermon, I don't know if you remember him. He's been in the league maybe a couple of years already, but former standout running back at Ohio State, and maybe he just doesn't have anything in the tank. But Trey Sermon was a guy that I thought would be intriguing, at least to give a look to.
Sure.
Cornerback Bradley Roby was another wave or cut. And I know there were some other possibilities the Vikings maybe had looked into as well. But yeah, those are a couple of names I would say are of interest to me. But yeah, I definitely agree with what you said earlier in the show, Tony, about like this is not the final 53.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be at minimum, and it's probably going to be at least 2 or maybe even 3. But I'd say there's going to be at least one move, if not more. I know that's not really huge to say, but I would be pretty blown away if there was not at least one move made.
Yeah. Desmond King, that is another one.
Oh, my boy.
Yeah.
I talked about bringing him in last year. They should have. Was he actually cut?
I think he was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, bring him in. Bring him in. He was actually for a good part of the season. He was actually a good part of the season a year ago. One of the better slot corners in the league by PFF. So I don't know if Houston just really wants to take a look at their younger players because they are in a rebuilding year. I mean, that would make sense. Sure. But I think yeah, Desmond King, I'd be fine if he comes to Minnesota because Hawks, go Hawks. I'm a big Hawkeye guy, and he's a former Hawkeye. So, and former Thorpe Award winner, I believe. I think that's right. Jim Thorpe, was he the cornerback guy? I think
so.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, somebody can prove me wrong in the comments otherwise, but
that's right.
Uh-oh. We've got some bad juju coming in here. I have a bad feeling they won't keep Jefferson after this season, depending, of course, on how Addison does. They need to get salary cap under control. Yeah. Well, let me just tell you some good news from from what I heard this morning. If I can find it, I'm gonna.
Well, let me
now,
add it.
But
While you look,
go
let
ahead.
me add my 2 cents really quick. Only because I was the instigator of some of this propaganda earlier this offseason. If you tell me that this team is gonna, again, not have a great season, let's say we end up where all the pundits put us, somewhere between 7 and 9 wins, right? This season, maybe miss the playoffs. Now that's going to put us not super high up in the draft order. So we're kind of in this like weird position. If we feel like we need to rebuild, which I think we kind of need to start acknowledging that, maybe they do ship Justin Jefferson off, because guess what? There is a team that would pay up big time for the number 1 receiver in the NFL.
Gosh.
And let's say we want to go up and get Caleb Williams at the number 1 pick, and we will trade Justin Jefferson. Obviously, Kirk's going to walk because obviously his contract's over. Look, it's not the worst deal in the world. I mean, especially if Addison looks like something we could, I don't want to say necessarily like build around, but a receiver is going to be limited. I mean, how many of these star receivers have we seen come and go? They're in the league, and they still can't win Super Bowls because you need a good team around them. A couple that come to mind: Calvin Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins. Like these guys, phenomenal receivers.
Randy Moss
kind of doesn't mean anything until they can get on a good team with a good roster. Yeah, he didn't win a Super Bowl, and
Stephon Diggs.
Stephon Diggs. I mean, so
Devontae
I love
Adams.
I love Justin Jefferson, and I of course want to see him in purple, but I don't think I'm in love with him enough to basically be okay with not building a Super Bowl caliber roster. That's the trade-off, right? Like, so I don't know. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. We talked about what kind of package that would get the Vikings talking. It would probably be at least the Tyreek Hill package for them to say anything. Like, yeah, no. Oh, okay. Let's hear a little more. Okay, we're getting somewhere now.
Yeah.
But here's what Diana Rossini, again, I think I quoted her recently on one of our episodes, but very trusted NFL reporter, and then we're going to wrap the show up. The Vikings have been motivated to get wide receiver Justin Jefferson's contract done all summer. Both sides have traded proposals on the deal, not traded like trade proposals. Like they're just want to make that clear. Traded proposals on what the deal will look like. She is told that conversations are going well, but it's not done yet. This is all happening while the reigning NFL Offensive Player of the Year has never missed a practice during training camp. All optimistic, a huge deal will be completed. So there you go. Sounds like things are going well in terms of the negotiations, even though it's not done yet. There's somebody that had to type, if it was going well, wouldn't the deal be done already? Well, not necessarily. There's a lot that goes into a contract that we don't even know the half of, I think, Tony. Like, there are so many minute details, like with workout bonuses and, if he gets 2,000 yards and wins MVP, there's another $10 million bonus or something. I don't know. Just, crazy things like that. Like, and that's just one side of it. Like, if there's like a clause for something that, if this happens, then you don't get this, or if that happens, then you get, different things like that. So I'm just, people just need to, like old Rogers used to say, RELAX, relax.
Or as Rogers used to also say, go hide in a hole for a week and you'll be better off for it.
Well, some of us can't afford to do that, but congrats, Rogers.
That's right. Just don't see your shadow. Otherwise, we got 6 more weeks of winter.
That's right. So there it is. That is our 53-man roster reaction show. If the Vikings make any significant moves before the, I should say in the next few days, we'll probably do a short video on it. But we also, in the next week, are going to have plenty of content for you guys. We're going to have a Lions preview, a Lions season preview. We want to scout the North. We're scouting the North to see how bad they're going to be or how good they're going to be, depending on the team. So we're scouting the Lions, we're scouting the Packers, we're scouting the Bears. I should have put the Packers last because that's what they deserve. But there you go. So, anyways, we're going to do those 3 shows. Then we're doing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers preview for next week. So, looking forward to doing that. We don't have a guest lined up as of yet, but hopefully we're hoping to get someone sort of prestigious. We'll see. We'll see. You always got to shoot your shots, right?
That's right.
So we'll see what happens, but plenty of great content coming for you guys. The off season's over. We're ready to grind. And then as we had scrolling at the bottom of our screen, join us for Fan Express lines starting in week 1, right after the Bucs game, 15 minutes after the game on Sunday, September 10th, right here on our YouTube channel. For those of you that are watching us live on our YouTube channel, Skol Purple Pod on YouTube. That is our YouTube channel. So for those of you that are wanting the instant reaction after the Vikings destroy the Buccaneers, that's the hope. I probably just jinxed it. But you can join us here on YouTube instead of waiting for the audio version, or you can still wait for the audio version. That'll probably be released Monday. I'm not going to release it right away because I want to give our YouTube audience a little what do you want to say? Little
leg up on the competition. I don't
leg up on the competition. There you go. So there you have it, gentlemen. And I guess I was referring to myself in that, and I guess whoever else is watching. So really appreciate you. Hopefully, maybe a lady in here too. But thank you all for watching the Skol Purple Podcast. Plenty more content coming, guys. Excited to bring it to you, Tony. Looking forward to getting rolling here in the regular season, man.
Absolutely. Let's rock, baby.
Yes, sir. All right. As always, Skol.
Let's go.